All right, good evening, everyone. You've got a temporary host tonight because our great host, the Mighty T, has been called away on important work business, and it must be important because there's barely anything more important than the Big Football Magpie podcast. But anyway, we'll look forward to Mighty T back next week. But, of course, we have Magpie Girl here as usual. So good evening, Magpie Girl. Welcome.
Good evening, Gone Critical.
And as a special guest appearance, we're very privileged to have Vicky Park with us tonight. Good evening.
Yeah, privileged indeed. Good evening.
Hi,
So we've
VP.
decided to call this the Mod Squad. So if anyone's old enough to remember that show on TV.
Sadly, yes.
All of us remember it, unfortunately. We've decided tonight we'll start with a little bit of a chat about last week. It was a bit more of the balloon coming back to earth, I thought. We've had a very good start to the season looking at teams that are not going to finish in the 8, and now we've had Geelong and Richmond, who are borderline 8 teams, possibly stretch us out and then score heavily against us quickly at times, which has been our big fault. It was disappointing. Magpie Girl, what was your view of it all?
Well, I was watching that first quarter and I was thinking, this is going to be such a good percentage builder. And then, of course, it all turned around in the second quarter and it looked like we were going, we just struggled really from then. I think it was a wonderful comeback to get competitive and if we'd had maybe 2 more minutes, we might have won, who knows. But look, I think it was a game we probably shouldn't have lost.
But it definitely had that to and fro appearance of it that at times you thought, we were going to win easily and then they'd come over the top of us and we'd come back. So it was entertaining as a game of football.
Yeah, it's a real nail-biter.
Disappointing. And VP, how did you find it?
Look, I think for a neutral person it would have been an entertaining game, the changing of the lead all the time, but obviously it was a nail-biter for us. I'm known to get up and leave my seat and run away during close games, but I stuck it out. I also felt for most of the game that we somehow were not really quite going to get there. So it was a feeling of inevitability for me. But the other, and according to all the Richmond fans, including the guy next to me who I struck up a friendship with, was that was their best game for the year. So they needed to play at their house. And there's something, we can take something away from that, I suppose, if you're like I am. I'm always trying to find a positive out of a loss.
Yeah, well, I think they did. I mean, their stars did come out a bit because I thought Cochin and Delidio were pretty exceptional and Jack Rewald played well. So Dustin Martin was very good. They had their big names up, so I can see that they would think that was a good performance, but we still looked like we had their measure at times, so ultimately disappointing.
Yes, very.
Any players? I thought contrary to what a few people think, I thought the cloak and white combination is really starting to gel a bit. I mean, it's not outstanding, but both were solid contributors.
His brother from another mother.
I'd just like to talk about White. There's been a lot of discussion about him this week on the forum. Negativity, as there often is, but people coming out saying, well, if you're looking at his statistics, he really is starting to get the kind of stats that we do need in a forward. Whether he's the second or the third forward in support of Cloak is where there's debate about, how effective he is. But he's not about to be dropped, that's for sure. He does a job. Sometimes he does it better than other times, but he takes marks. He's having shots on goal, not always converting, but he is doing what the role of a third or perhaps a second forward should be doing. I
think absolutely. If you've got a second tall forward that he's looking at a 30-goal plus season with getting stats, that's acceptable. I mean, it's not fantastic, but it's definitely in the acceptable range.
It's a pass mark at the moment, I think.
Yeah.
He played a better game last week. He's been looking like he didn't quite know what to do, and I think last week was probably the most confident I've seen him playing. Maybe he's just gaining confidence and therefore getting into it a bit more rather than standing back and kind of almost, thinking, what do I do?
Well, that's what at times he does look. He just looks like he just doesn't read the game very well. And that was apparent in the Geelong match. But he's definitely better than he made a contribution. I mean, he's not starring yet, but that duo is improving and hopefully moving forward.
Well, we need him too, don't we? We haven't got a choice, really.
Yeah, that's right. Well, while Reid remains injured, Moore's too young. Galt is lesser than White. I mean, Galt's got to come from a lot further back than White to fulfil that role. So he's clearly the one we need to continue to stand up and improve.
What happened in the second quarter? Was it changes that Richmond made? Was it Tuvey going off?
I think you touch on a good point there. I think the loss of Tuvey, he's a great lockdown player, and they were running free. He would have made a difference, I'm sure. So that's part of it, but it happened the week before when Tuvey was there, so it can't be the whole answer. I think Pendlebury spoke today and said, it's a matter of when that's happening. We've got to possess the ball and possess it and make some good decisions. And that sounds simple enough, but it's clearly what we didn't do. So I think it's probably comes down to the leadership in the centre square, and that's your Pendles and Swan and these blokes to really step up when that's happening and lock it down a bit.
And also step in to maybe try and slow it down and get the tempo under control for us. So Richmond lose a bit. Because they really
free run at it.
Let go, didn't they?
Yeah.
Just on PK, disappointing. I know your thoughts on him, GC. We've talked about that before. But really, I feel really disappointed for him. It was a chance for him to step up. He just didn't, did he? He just looked lost and not. It's a perceived lack of effort. I'm sure there's not a lack of effort, but the way he looks there, he doesn't seem to, I don't know, put himself in the right place, go in hard when he needs to. It's not working.
Yeah, he's got a laconic sort of look, and that sort of player always, when they're not having a good day, tends to get accused of not trying, and I'm sure it's not that. Yeah. But he's just not quite up to speed on it yet, and maybe he gets his next chance and he does. But he's got to, at some point in this season, start showing us that he's comfortable at AFL level, because he needs to be this year, I think.
That must be one of the difficulties of being the sub, though, especially when someone goes off injured, that you kind of got to come on the ground and somehow be fitted into the team in a position that maybe you don't normally play in, or, there's a great reshuffle that has to go on in order to, as was last week, to cover Tuvey, and really that's not a role that he would normally play, and he wasn't playing down the back anyway, was he? But
no. But and that's true. There's no doubt for him to have the continuity of how much. But he did get 3 quarters. And the other thing, unfortunately, is that there is the sub, so someone has to do it. And when you're on that edge of the team, you've got to take your opportunities. You can say all those things, but he just needs to take the opportunities when they're there. And he can't let that be the thing that says to him, holds him back. It's got to happen now for him, or, soon.
Yep.
Broomhead was the other one that disappointed me. He just hasn't seemed to be going on this season from where he left off. He's got another chance, but I think he's got to be, he's got to step up soon too himself.
Yeah, what do you think that is? Because he showed such promise in what did he get, 6 or 8 games at the end of 2014? And those of us who were VFL watchers knew that, he had the sort of skills, that ability to, get away, get the ball, get out of packs. There were things that we could see at VFL level that we were confident about transferring to the seniors.
Like Broomhead a lot, actually. Classy player, isn't he?
And he did certainly show those signs in his games towards the end of last year, but it's taken him a while to get back into it.
Yeah. I think maybe it's just simply he's still a young player. He'd barely have 10 games up to his career yet. And
exactly.
Sometimes when they lose form, sometimes he may need just another step down, regain confidence, and then come back again. which I don't think will be a bad thing if he has to do that. But I think he probably at senior level, he needs a good game, or otherwise a trip back and regain confidence.
Yep, agree with that.
Yeah, well, you only have to look at Fazzola, who's back in the team this week, and
yeah,
he, after a few games in the VFL, I didn't see the first quarter last week, but he apparently played a blinder.
Yes,
that Vicky, and
yep.
and now he's back in the seniors, so that's great.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and the reserves had a good win again. I think I got there for about the second half, so I missed the Fasolo show, which was apparently very good to begin with.
It was.
And I think our other young guys that are coming up, I thought Kennedy looked good again. Marsh keeps knocking on the door and saying, well, at some point give me a chance and let me show you my wares. He's a good-looking player when he's on song in the reserve.
Sure is.
Anyone else stand out to you there?
Well, there's the VFL player still, of course,
yes,
that everybody's talking about, but he's kicking a few goals. He's doing okay.
Yeah, he looks very solid.
Yeah, he certainly does. But yeah, Marsh, Kennedy, obviously, who was fantastic up until three-quarter time, and Alex Fasolo went off at half-time, or went off because they were keeping him, as an emergency for the senior game.
Yeah.
Richmond then, in the third quarter, very much got back into it. I didn't see the last quarter. I took off at three-quarter time to get in a queue for the balcony and the MCC members, but kept an eye on it on my phone, and we managed to stick it out.
Because we looked towards the end of the third quarter, they'll overrun us, and at the start of the last quarter, I thought the same. But we came back a couple of times. Young Blair kicked a good goal.
Yeah. It's a terrific last quarter.
Yeah. And Scharenberg's just building.
He is building.
Yeah, he's looking better each week, which is very encouraging.
He seems to have put a little bit more muscle back on, because there was some images there of him earlier in the year where he just looked like a waif.
Yes, yeah. He's obviously been in the gym a bit too, so that's good for him.
That's all good, yep.
So now we come to this week. So we've got the Gold Coast this week, who seem to have more troubles than we do. So that's a starting point, but they have burst our bubble a couple of times in the last couple of seasons.
Oh, no.
Who wants to start first with their prognostication?
Well, I'm interested in the I haven't seen any press about it, but I'm just kind of interested in the Buckley versus Eade thing. And I just wonder how, they must know each other really well and know each other's coaching styles really well. So it'd be really interesting to see how they come out against each other.
Mm. And, of course, Eade will know our whole list very well.
Exactly.
So that may give him a bit of an advantage first up. Two big ins, I think. Side bottom when I think an excellent decision straight back into the side, because he has that class, and in that first match against Brisbane, he really looked like he'd stepped up again. Such a big loss, I think, in the last few weeks. He will be a player that I think can step right back in, because he has that tremendous natural fitness.
Yeah,
he won't have lost that. He's just fluid with the ball, so he'll be a big in. And Alex Fasolo, I'm a Fasolo fan, so I'm glad to see him coming back. But he's one that needs to now frank that by some immediate good form, I think. So they're two very good ins for mine.
Who's covering Tuvey down in the back line? I see he's out.
Yeah, well, I think Tuvey and no Ramsey, because Ramsey's the other one that's given us a lot of run early in the season. So they're both half back with run and shutdown capacity. I don't think there's a direct. I think it's just going to be left to the current backman. You think that Langdon will stay back the whole match, and even Seedsman can go back if necessary. But I like him more on that attacking wing.
He's certainly in the lineup that. For the team selection, he's on the wing with Varco on the opposite one. Yeah, Varco went back a bit last week, didn't he? He had to once. Tuvey went down, and it did really wreck our structures. Just on Steele, we've missed him enormously. He's really, I think, I'm not going to necessarily say our second best, but our second most important player. He's so important to us. He just runs all day, forward, back, pops up all over the place. He's going to be a fantastic addition. I'm not quite as confident that he'll just step straight in and be the seedsman, the side bottom that we know. I think it might take him a game or two to get into it, but I wouldn't be surprised if even by the second half of the game on Saturday he's starting to find his feet, because he's just a natural.
Yeah, well, that's why I think. I mean, look, he may not step, but it won't surprise me if he just takes off from where he left off, because he'll be fit, and I think he does. He just naturally plays the game well. He's a real footballer.
Sure is.
So you mentioned that you thought he could possibly be our second most important player. I'm scratching my head to think who you would call our most important player. Could be
Scott Embry from Collingwood.
I hope he's not lame though. He really was hobbling, wasn't he, a little bit?
Yeah.
Towards the end.
I guess if he was lame, he'd still play, even with they wouldn't keep him out. So that is a bit of a concern. But I mean, what a massive player he's been. On the Collingwood site this week, they had a few of those clips of his starting off and interviews when he was a kid, and he stepped right in. That first match where he got that pass from Buckley, kicked his first goal, was just a portent of things to come, wasn't it? But he's just been one of the great Magpies, and we salute him.
Yeah. He's a once-in-a-generation player for us. He really is.
Yeah. You just think, and the other video I've watched many times is must have been his first or second season. I can't remember when he snatched that ball out in the who was running past him. It was someone who was with the ball.
The Sydney game, is that the famous hand of God?
Right. Yeah, that's right. And whoever it was, it might have been McVeigh, I think. Whoever it was running along thinking he had the ball, and then it was gone.
Yes, but that's only recently been surpassed by the putting Daisy on his bum clip.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing about Pendles is time stands still on every trick in the book, but a true professional.
Yeah, fantastic milestone.
Absolutely.
And our other one is young Adams is coming up for game 50, not 50 with us, but 50 in total.
Yep, good on him.
Just consolidating nicely. He hasn't starred as yet, but he's become a real solid contributor. And I think with Sidebottom and then Greenwood back will allow him to be a little bit freer as well. So I'm sure he's looking forward to those few being back and just turning into a nice midfielder for us.
Yeah, he's playing intelligently, isn't he? It's just starting to get rid of the ball with a bit more skill and make better decisions.
Yes, yeah. What's your fears this week, or do you have any, or you think we'll just walk away with it?
Well, we should be confident, so I have to say we will win. But I'm a bit concerned with the way the whole Witts and Grundy thing is going. So I had great hopes for that, and it's still very early days, and I'm a big fan of Jared Witts. I'd like to see that start to work a bit better on the weekend, but there's a lot of criticism and analysis on the forum this week, and the slowness that comes with it is a bit of a concern, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. And I think I think that's one of the things. When Corey Galt was there, he's got more mobility. He grew up as a midfielder. He understands that. He runs well for a bloke 6'6", but he doesn't give you the other things that Witts does. So, and I think Paddy Carnices, as much as it's sad for him to go out, having him there as well slowed us in the forward line. So I think Carnices out might, not that Fasolo's overly quick, but might just add a little bit. But I've actually been not as unhappy as some with Witts, because I think it's, he's had a shoulder injury. He's been out for a while. His stats are actually quite good. His stats are not much different to Grundy's.
Yeah.
And I thought his first quarter against Geelong, apart from that mark he dropped, he did some really nice things. I think you've just got to let those two build into it. It's 2 games too early to start be questioning it for mine, because Wits showed last year he's very capable.
Yes.
He was our best ruckman, and I think we've just got to give him a chance to get back to that. Anyone else we're looking forward to see this week?
I don't know anything about the Gold Coast team. I'm really sorry, but
they're all party boys who aren't playing very well. They're not
you hope. I'm just looking
yeah.
at the list here, and I hardly know any of them, to be honest.
Gathered in there. They don't have any names, and
us being all part of the mod squad, so not quite up to it. But if we've got anyone on the board this week that's making the trip up, could they get out on Friday night and see if they can find a few of those Gold Coast boys? So they should be at the disco somewhere, and just buy them a drink on behalf of us. We're prepared to fund it, probably, if you.
GC, I don't think they go to discos anymore.
Yeah, I know. Don't worry. I realised as soon as I said that.
But seriously, there has been some issues with that club, and they clearly need to sort a few things out up there culture-wise.
Yeah, I think that might be Rodney Eade coming in and showing a firmer hand than McKenna might have put a few noses out of joint, so that may be part of their issue. Do you think Rodney will continue to rule them pretty hard, I would have thought?
What's happening with Ablett? He's just sort of temporarily or indefinitely not there? What's that?
Yeah.
That's his shoulder's not fully right, or?
Well, that's what they're saying to us, so I'm assuming that. I'm assuming it wouldn't be anything else.
No, I'm sure it's. I'm not implying that, but they're a bit unclear as to.
Good guys, Christians versus the party boys, isn't it? See that stuff.
So, what position does Prestia play for Gold?
Prestia, midfielder.
Who would go on him? And who's the other one? Riscatelli, who goes to him?
VP, with your extensive knowledge of the Gold Coast list, what do you think?
Thank you very much, GC. I have I'm looking at these names on the Gold Coast list, and really I know very few of them, and I understand they've got a huge number of players out, but there's obviously some of the well-known ones, and this is the easy part. The Prestias, the Bonnells, and Riscatelli are all good players. I'm a bit of a fan of Bonnell, but he does have a somewhat of a reputation for being a bit of a party boy, but fabulous player, really dangerous, really hard to contain him.
They've had a couple of guys that looked like, I think, guys like McKenzie and that sort of thing have also dropped off a lot this season. So a lot of the kids that looked that were going to be good maybe haven't stepped up this year. And they've also probably lost their best midfielder after Ablett in Jaeger O'Meara. He's a massive loss for them.
And he's injured, is he?
Yeah, he's out for the season. So
right.
So he's gone. But they're a good side. I think they're a good side who's playing poorly, and we've just got to hope that happens Dave again this week, and that they don't prove, see us as their sort of stepping stone back into playing well. But with on the form, we should win this and win it well.
We absolutely should, and I don't want it to be another situation where we're playing a team that feels like it's their last chance, their last opportunity to establish something for the year. It's everybody's grand final when we play them. It was Richmond's grand final last week, and we're always up against these sorts of things. But I noticed Danny Stanley's back in the team too. He's been a bit of a on the fringes lately, hasn't he? Up there, our ex player.
Yeah. Oh, he's been a solid player for them without being a star. But been a good pickup for them, and really taking his career up to the level perhaps where people could see it having been. He's never going to be a superstar of any sort, but he's a good, solid contributor.
Yeah.
Charlie Dixon's the other interesting one up there. He's not signed up yet, and I know he's had injury concerns, but he's a big key forward, and if he came up, he would be one of the players I think you'd look at the end of the year if he was free to chase. But
certainly,
we don't want him to... sorry?
His name is being tossed around, isn't it?
Yeah, well, because he's out of contract. He's had a lot of injuries. He's got a lot of potential. And with their, the apparent disharmony up there, he might be one you might shake out of the team if you went out with him with a decent offer.
Mm-hmm.
Depends what they'll come back with him.
Yeah.
The other person I wanted to mention this week was Jack Crisp, because he's just each week stepping up further and making himself more importantly. I was watching them. I was out to dinner last night with a fellow that I knew. He came up to me and said, "I'll tell you something. I'm Jack Crisp's uncle." So he gave me a little bit of a chat about how Jack's finding Collingwood. He says he loves it, absolutely loves it. He said he was ultimately glad to be out of Brisbane because there was a lot of problems. Interestingly, he said he was shattered when Boss went. He was obviously had a very good relationship with Boss and also very sad to see Brown go. But the interesting thing, he said there was that bit of a story when he got his first call up here to say he'd been picked up in the draft, and he thought he was being prank called a few times. But he told his uncle that when he arrived, the two blokes that marched up to see him first were Pendlebury and Swan. And since those two guys have taken him under their wing and just said, "You follow us and do what we do, we'll show you what to do." And it's been a great story. But that's a nice little interesting sort of insight into seeing who's welcomed him. Swanee and Pendles, not a bad combo.
That's a terrific story, GC, and it's interesting. You can see Pendles doing that, but we get the impression Swan wouldn't. But what the Swan that we see in the media, I don't think is the Swan that you see around the club.
Yes, yeah, I think that's absolutely. He's clearly a very well-liked player. The other thing I said facetiously was perhaps, all his mates have gone, and he might be by necessity on the lookout for new mates. So as soon as someone walks in the doors, he might grab them.
That's being a little unkind. There's something very special about Swanee.
Yeah, well, I'm a Swanee lover, so he's had some quiet matches. Again last week he was clearly our best player. He'll have Brownlow votes. He'll probably have about 6 of them by now.
Well, they love him. The umpires, they always have.
I declare the winner of the 2011 Brownlow Medal, Dame Swan from the Collingwood Football Club.
I mean, when you look at Swan and Pendlebury and what ended up being fairly extensive surgery that they had at the end of last season, they're both playing so well in terms of obviously being rid of, enormous pain and everything that they run around with week on week without us knowing about it. And, it's just good to see them playing so freely and.
Well, it would be nice if they continue. I imagine if they both collect their 6th All-Australian at the end of the season. That would be a nice little part of the season if it could happen.
That would be terrific. And Swan was obviously hobbled last year. He just wasn't himself.
Yeah.
I'd like to give mention, if I could, to Braden Maynard being named as an emergency. That's outstanding. 3 weeks ago, I thought that guy was a long way off. And I know an emergency, just naming him as the emergency doesn't mean he'll get the game, obviously, but that's a terrific effort. 8 rounds in?
Yeah, no, I hadn't seen that. Yeah, that's. I think they often use it for the younger fellas to say, you're not far away now and you're on the up, and we'll look at that Maynard and Marsh both in there.
Yeah, well, John O'Marsh has been in the emergency several times. So it's terrific.
He must be close to getting a game at some point.
He must be, yeah. It's really his disposal is the biggest knock on him, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, if you look at him in the seconds, he does. I think his two weaknesses are his disposal, and for a guy with pace, he just sometimes loses his opponent on the lead. He gets a bit lost there. Mm-hmm. But he also does some great intercept work, and repels some attacks very solidly. So he's just going. You just see him as continuing to improve, and he must ultimately get a chance at some time, I would think. Good. Anyway, that's I think that's probably a wrap of this week. Well, it's been a a great show. We've missed the Mighty T, but
He's
to
busy.
have the Mighty VP as a replacement, he's been fantastic. So thank you very much, VP, for coming along.
Thank you.
Thanks, VP.
Thank you.
Magpie Girl, thank you and you've got to have plenty to say this week. So next week when Mighty T's back, you might just have to chuck your voice in back in again.
Sit in the
In
background.
the clip behind the ear. Laurie Holden, thank you very much for doing your editing work and all that fantastic contribution.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
We
Thanks,
hope
Steve.
the Pies get up this week. We expect them to. We expect we'll be back on the winning list. And we will see you all or hear you all next week. Signing off now. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.